Get your ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
Maybe if you had a business that you were passionate about, then you would know what it takes to run a business, but you don't. So don't even act like you know what I'm talking about.
So, you did it. 4 years, 5 years, maybe 6. I'm not judging you. We don't judge here. But you did it. You survived. You survived the lectures, the group projects where you did everything by yourself, the all-nighters, the bathroom you cried in, and the truly criminal amount of money that you or your parent or a very confident bank spent on a piece of paper. And now, congratulations! You're unemployed. Are you unemployed?
Huh?
You're working in a cafe, or you're at home sending out application every single day into what feel like a black hole, or you're making a YouTube video in your bedroom hoping one day YouTube will pay you. And obviously vaporizing fast when someone brings up, hey, how the job search going? Your relatives say things like, just network more, or fix your resume, or the classic, when I was your age, I just walked in and asked for a job. And yes, when you were my age, a studio apartment didn't cost more than a kidney. At first, this might look like a bunch of personal stories, separate cases that just happen to look similar. But when you see a lot of people on social media in completely different countries are complaining about the same thing, are running into this exact same wall, maybe this isn't a personal story anymore. Maybe it's a story of an entire generation. A generation that's more educated than any generation before it. A generation that grew up with the internet, the technology, with almost unlimited access to information. And yet, somehow, this is also the generation that feels the most lost trying to find its place in the job market. For decades, society ran on a formula that felt pretty simple. Study hard, pass your exam, get into university, get a degree, find a job, and settle into a stable life. That formula was never perfect, but it was reliable enough that millions of families around the world kept believing in it, kept telling their kid that, you know what, do this and you'll be fine. That formula still exists today, except now the second to last step, find a job, has gotten a lot harder. More and more young people are realizing that graduating doesn't automatically mean landing a job that fits them, and sometimes it doesn't even guarantee landing a job at all. And the biggest contradiction in today's job market is companies keep saying they don't have enough workers, while young people keep saying they can't find a job. That doesn't make any sense and obviously sounds really weird. If companies are short on people, shouldn't new graduates are benefiting the most right now? But the real picture is more complicated. What most companies are missing isn't worker in general. It's a very specific kind of worker. People who already have experience, people who can create value almost immediately, people who don't need months of training before they are useful. In other words, the market isn't short on people. It's short on people who are already finished products. And that's exactly where the contradiction shows up. A lot of companies say they want to hire young talent, but they want that talent to already have real-world experience. They want someone who's energetic and adaptable, but they don't want to spend time training them. They want someone flexible, but also someone who's already great at job on day one. Sometimes you're reading a job listing, you get the feeling that companies are looking for a 20 years old something with a resume of a 30 years old. And that's why it has become completely normal to see entry-level posting asking for 3 to 5 year experience. And for a lot of new graduates, this creates a loop that feel almost impossible to escape. No experience means no job, but no job means no way to get experience. But unemployment is really just a tip of the iceberg. Underneath it is something talk about a lot less, working a job that has nothing to do with what you actually trained for. If you only look at unemployment numbers, things might not look that bad because technically a lot of graduates do have jobs, but more important question is what kind of jobs. Someone who studied marketing might be working in sales. Someone who studied engineering might be doing work that doesn't require a degree at all. And someone who studied international communication might be making YouTube videos. To be clear, no job is something to look down on. The real issue is that a lot of young people aren't able to use a skill they spend years learning. They have a job, but it doesn't reflect their expertise. They have income, but it doesn't feel like a career. They're busy every day, but they still feel like they're standing still. And there's another pattern becoming more common too. A serious mismatch between what job demands and what they actually pay. Young people today are expected to bring a lot more to the table than any generation before them. A degree, bare minimum. Speaking another language, basic. Tech skills are assumed by default. Internship is just bonus, not achievement. Knowing how to use AI becoming the new standard. Employers want people who communicate well, work in teams, solve problems, and keep learning forever. But starting salary in a lot of industry haven't grown to match those expectations at all. This is why so many Gen Z end up in a strange in-between state. Not unemployed but not secure either. Or employed but not stable, working full-time but the adult life still feels out of reach, especially in big cities where rent and the cost of living rise way faster than entry-level salary. The result is a generation that's better educated than ever but feel more financially fragile than ever too. So what's actually causing all of this? Is Gen Z just lazier, less patient, or asking too much from a first job? Maybe the answer isn't any of those. When something happens on a global scale like this, the cause usually isn't about individuals. It's about bigger shifts happening in the structure of the job market itself. Shift number one, the world is producing more college graduates than ever. At first, that sounds like a good news, and honestly, it is. More people having access to higher education is a real achievement. Millions of people now get to study, build expertise, and improve their lives through it. But like a lot of achievement, it came with a side effect nobody planned for. You go back a few decades, a degree was relatively rare. Just graduating from college was enough to make you stand out. An employer saw that degree and understood, oh, this person made it through barriers most people didn't. Today, millions of students graduate every single year. In a lot of countries, having a degree is basically the norm, like in my country. And when more people have the same advantage, that advantage stops being an advantage. Economists call this degree inflation. A degree used to be a VIP pass. Today, in a lot of industry, it's just a ticket to get through the front door.
Magic!
You still need it, but having it alone isn't enough. So graduates run into a hard truth. They did everything they were told to do, but so did thousands of other people. And when thousands of candidates show up with nearly identical degrees, companies start judging on other things. Real-world experience, personal project, a portfolio, problem-solving ability, skill that sometimes even the candidates themselves don't know where they were supposed to learn, and honestly, you cannot blame them. This thing creates its own contradiction. Students spend years investing in formal education, while the job market increasingly values experience gained outside the classroom. A lot of young people are discovering that study and working aren't as connected as they used to be. That's why many people end up working in a field that has nothing to do with what they study. And I think part of the reason is there still aren't enough real career guidance programs for young people. I don't know about you, but I can speak for myself. When I was in high school, there was none of that. And when they do exist, the advice is way too generic to actually help. So think about it. You take an 18-year-old who has never worked a real job, never experienced what any career actually feels like, and ask them to pick one field that they will dedicate their whole life to. A lot of people choose their major because my parents told me to, or I heard this field is hot, or honestly sometimes just because it sounded cool. So they graduate into a field that later on they realize, oh, this is not what I want to do at all, and then they left feeling lost and directionless, carrying this heavy sense of having wasted 4 years, feeling depressed, and then feeling like a loser. You can take me for example. I study international communication. It's kind of like related to journalism, but now I'm a YouTuber. Loosely related, sure, but not exactly what I spent 4 years studying. The shift number 2, the world is changing faster than education can keep up with. For most human history, knowledge changed slowly. An engineer who graduated in 1985 could use most of what they learned 4 years afterwards. An accountant who worked decades with processes that barely changed. Someone in marketing could apply the same basic principle for most of their career. Today,
that's different.
A new technology show up, a new platform launches, a new tool become the standard. A whole new career path appears nowhere, sometimes within a few years, sometimes within a few months. A student walks into freshman year thinking they are preparing for the future. 4 years later, when they graduate, that future has already changed. The technology, the companies, the skills in demand, sometimes the entire industry. But this doesn't mean that college is failing people. College was built to give you a long-term foundation. The problem is that the job market right now increasingly wants skill that you can use immediately with no delay. One side is built to teach you how to think, and the other wants people who can produce results starting tomorrow, and new graduates are caught right in the middle of that gap. Shift number 3, AI. Whenever AI and job come up together, the conversation usually jumps straight into one extreme question: is AI going to steal everyone's job? But why don't we just ask which group of workers it is hitting hardest? And I think one of it is the people who are starting out. In the past, entry-level job work like a first rung on your career ladder. That's where people learn how to write a report, how to handle data, how to talk to clients, and understand how an organization actually runs day to day. That's where you build your first few years of experience. But a lot of those entry-level tasks are also the easiest to automate. Data entry, summarizing information, writing basic content, sorting data, repetitive routine work, exactly what AI is getting good at. But that doesn't mean that AI is replacing every young worker, but it is surely shrinking the number of entry points in certain fields. And from a Gen Z point of view, it's a bit feel like training for years for a competition, only to find out half of the seat got taken right before you arrive. And the shift number 4, how Gen Z thinks about work in the first place. For the first time in history, a young person in Vietnam can compare their life to millions of others around the world. Every single day, $1,000,000 startup, influencer, young creator building entire career online. A lot of it generally inspiring, but it's quietly reshaped what people expect from work. Previous generation mostly wanted stability. Gen Z still wants that, but we also want work that feels meaningful, a healthy environment, room to grow, balance, respect, and a sense of what they're doing actually matter. And I think none of that is unreasonable. The problem is that the job market doesn't always deliver. Most first jobs aren't glamorous. They're not the TikTok, the highlight reels. They're long meeting, endless spreadsheet, an inbox you never fully clear, repetitive tasks, and the quiet question of whether you're even on the right path. So the gap between expectation and reality grows, and when that gap sticks around long enough, people burn out. Not from laziness, but from carrying more pressure. The pressure of finding a job, of money, of constantly upgrading your skill, of competition, and of watching everyone else's highlight reel every day on your phone. So why are so many Gen Z graduates still struggling to find their footing? It's not one thing, not because college is useless, not because Gen Z is lazy, not simply because AI took all the jobs. It's several of these shifts landing on the same generation in a short window of time. More graduates than ever, a more competitive market, employer wants instant value, technology outpacing organization, AI reshaping entry-level work, and social media putting everyone's success story on displays at once. No single one of these would cause a crisis on its own, but together they put a real pressure special on the people who just entering the workforce. If you zoom out a little bit, this isn't just a job crisis, it's a crisis of expectations. For years, young people were taught that if they study hard, things would work out. Stepping into the real world, they're finding it doesn't run that simply anymore. Studying still matters, a degree still has value, but none of it is the guaranteed ticket it used to feel like. That doesn't make the effort pointless, but it just means the rules change, and maybe the hardest part isn't competing with other people, it's constantly adapting to the world that keeps shifting right when you finally think you understand it. That's why a lot of young people carry around a specific feeling, the feelings of always having to run to keep up with new technology, new skills, new market, and everyone else, sometimes just to stay exactly where you already are. Gen Z is living through one of the biggest transitions in the history of work. Career model that lasted decades are shifting. New industry keep appearing. Skills once considered special are become standard. Jobs once assumed permanent are disappearing faster than predicted. In other words, Gen Z isn't just looking for a job. We are learning to build a career in a world where the concept of career itself is being rewritten in real time. The previous generation mostly has to figure out how to get an opportunity. We have to figure out how to find the right opportunity in the middle of the endless option, requirements, and constant change. So does this mean that we should be scared? No, I think we should flip the question entirely. Instead of fearing AI will take our jobs or fearing the markets is moving too fast to keep up, we should ask ourselves, like, what do I need to do to stay relevant? Short answer, learn to work with AI and learn to keep upskilling yourself, period. Like I said, everyone has a college degree right now, but that doesn't mean that you don't need one. You still need a degree. That's your ticket through the door. Don't forget that. You need the foundation, you need the domain knowledge, the basic. You need to learn all of that. It's just that the game starts after you walk through the door. And second, you need tech skill. Like, come on, if you are a Gen Z and you say that no, you don't want to work with technology, you're basically choosing to fall behind, and you cannot blame that on anyone, just blame it on yourself. Next, you need people skill, communication, negotiation, leadership, teamwork, management, so more. And then you need the skill that help you survive the market changing, the rules meet game, self-learning, discipline, critical thinking, emotional regulation. Because you know what? The future doesn't belong to whoever scored the highest anymore. It belongs to whoever adapt the fastest. And in the end, maybe the most important thing to remember is this: feeling lost after graduation doesn't mean that you're a failure. It's happening across country, industry, every kind of field. Millions of young people are sending out the same resume, waiting on the same replies, and asking themselves the same question you are: will I actually find my place in this world? A question that feels deeply personal, but turns out to be the question of an entire generation. And to wrap this video up, I wish you and me the best luck in job hunting. Bye!